Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for your valuable time. I'm Chris Wren, the chair of the XDS Advisory Committee. Welcome to our new XDS podcast that allows you, the listener, to get to know our important contributors just a wee bit better and provides you with different and perhaps a better way to consume the knowledge we create through the event. For those of you new to the podcast, XDS stands for External Development Summit, an annual event we deliver in Vancouver in the first week of September. It's the only event of its kind that focuses on the practice of external development by bringing together developers and service providers to facilitate B2B connections, share knowledge, foster a community, and advance the practice of external development for the games industry. Our guest today may not need introduction for many of you out there. Carla Rylance, it is so lovely to have you join us.
Oh, thank you, Chris. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Carla is a personal friend, a colleague, ex-colleague, I should say, from EA. She's a member of the esteemed advisory committee, XDS Advisory Committee. Mm-hmm. And Carla, a fun fact you may not know, quite sure you hold the record for the most presentations delivered at XDS events over the years. So thank you.
Oh, that's amazing.
For that.
That's quite a nice award to have. Thank you.
Absolutely. The trophy is in the mail on the way.
Thank you. I will expect it.
So, Carla, for those that have not had the good fortune of meeting you, do you mind just introducing yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Carla Rylance. I am the head of external production at Behaviour Interactive. I've been in the games industry since 2005. I started as an artist, like a 3D and 2D artist for a little company called Supersonic Software in the UK, where I grew up, as you can probably tell by my voice. And from there, I kind of just slowly started to transition into the world of external development through management of, first of all, like freelancer resources. Then I got a job at a company called Dreams, focusing on outsource management for PlayStation home content.
Okay.
A few years afterwards, and which I almost feel was a bit like the metaverse before the metaverse existed, and that was kind of fun. And from there, I started working at some of the big studios that I'd been looking up to, like since I first started really getting into games when I was 16. You know, like I was working at Lionhead and Fable Legends at the time, which I was super ecstatic about. And then Lionhead closed, and an opportunity came up in Vancouver at the Coalition, working on Gears, and obviously I knew Vancouver was absolutely wonderful place because I'd been to XDS several times, and how can you not love Vancouver?
Absolutely.
It's just wonderful. So took the opportunity to go there, and from there went to EA to work with Chris for a wee while as part of the XDI team, which was a really great experience, lots of amazing learnings and lovely team. And from there started off on my latest adventure at Behaviour Interactive, who are Canada's largest independent game studio, actually. They're in Montreal, but I'm still in Vancouver, helping to make sure that all of our external engagements are hitting the quality that we need and that our relationships are super strong.
Wow, long, incredible career. And we're lucky and fortunate to have you had stayed in Vancouver and not be swooned to move out east.
I'm not going anywhere soon. I'm actually solidified here now. We bought
roots planted.
They are. We bought a house in Burnaby about a year and a half ago now, which is quite funny. It's like 20 minutes walk from the EA office. So as soon as I handed my notice in at EA, we got a house like 20 minutes walk from here, and I got a job in Montreal.
There you go.
It's typical, really.
Well, welcome again, Carla. It's so awesome to have you here. So today we're speaking about the presentation that you delivered at XDS in last September in 2022, External Development Essentials, Diversifying with confidence. Before we jump in, I think it actually is important to recognize the peer reviewer for this session. So John Campbell, external development producer with BioWare, supported you on this. Do you want to speak to that briefly and JC's involvement?
Yeah, JC's just like, you can't go wrong collaborating with JC, really. He's like such a nice, down-to-earth guy, and he does such an amazing job with the team that he has. But yeah, he was very passionate about the subject matter, about the importance of due diligence and the importance, or trying to get the audience to understand the importance of diversification, as it was like a big talking point for him and his team. And so, yeah, it was a really useful collaboration. Always gave lots of really, really great feedback. And I don't think it would have been where it was when I presented it if I hadn't had John on my side. He was amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. So shout out to JC
JC.
And the BioWare crew.
Thanks.
For loaning him out to you for a short period.
Yes, we're very worthwhile.
So I watched this presentation back the other day, and thinking about, putting myself in the shoes of a service provider, a vendor, a partner, or whatever you'd like to call them, especially those who are new to the space. And for me, and I'm not saying this just to be flattering, this would be my go-to presentation and my go-to reference if I was courting a potential client. There are fundamentals that you cover, certainly, but there's also some key areas that partners need to be thinking about, like the importance of being transparent with their client, or how they're developing their own staff to be excellent. So those are really strong takeaways for me. I want to know from you, Ms. Rylance, why the topic of diversification? Did you find yourself in a situation where your partners were not diverse enough? Did that cause challenges or issues for your team, for your studio? So why did you choose to kind of embark on this topic?
There's a couple of things that were the tipping point for this presentation, actually. One of them was, it was a few years ago, actually. I wanted to start a conversation on LinkedIn. So I said, if you were to go to any presentation about external development, what would you want it to be? And the amount of people that responded from service providers saying, I'd love to learn more about what's important when it comes to due diligence and what you look for. And that kind of stayed with me, like the hunger for service providers to understand what's important, what they should be striving for, what they're missing, was something that was not out there and something that wasn't overly discussed. So that's something that stayed with me for quite a long time and something that was brewing in my head. But also, when it came to the XDS Insights report from not this year that's just gone, with the data that's just come out, which is great, by the way. Nice one, Caroline and team and Chris Wren, etc.
Thank you.
There was a section, I believe, about the rate in which developers are changing partners and
the frequency of the changing rate
of it,
yeah,
and the reason why developers change partners. And I think the top reason for developers changing partners was to diversify work with other partners. And that could encompass a wide range of different reasons. But it did show to me that diversification was on the mind of developers. And so I wanted to delve a little bit more into that. And the topic also of the need to diversify because of things like their partners were being acquired, so they were losing capacity, or their partners were in regions of instability, so they would need to try and find reasons to diversify if the partner could not help to get the capacity that they needed due to those unfortunate circumstances. So there were several tipping points as to why I wanted to present on it. I was like, right, this is the time. This is why I'm doing it. There seems to be a lot of desire and need to have that specific conversation.
And I'm glad we could give you the stage as an outlet for that, to share that knowledge with the community. You use the term diversification anxiety in your talk, and I'm wondering, did you coin that term? If so, have you trademarked it? No, just kidding. But could you explain the meaning? Like, what is diversification anxiety?
Yes, I did pen that term, and you can use it in future conversation if you'd like to. I give you permission. I don't know if you've ever been in. If you're working for a developer and you're listening to this, you may have come across this in the past. So you'll be say working on an art engagement with an external company now, and you're in your internal team and you need to increase capacity, but the partner that you are using externally, they just don't have the capacity to ramp up, but your leadership team are like, come on, we need more heads. And you're like, well, maybe we can find capacity in another provider and we can find a great team. There's so many out there, but there is friction on the internal team to do so. It could be that there's the worry about how long it's going to take to onboard them. There's the worry about the quality is not going to be as good as our current partner. There's the worry of communication isn't going to be as good because we've got this amazing relationship with our current partner. There's all these different reasons why people get nervous about either expanding their capacity or moving capacity or shifting capacity to other service providers. And it causes anxiety with people on their internal teams. And something that I wanted to try and tackle was, it can be work to, expand your capacity to other service providers, but there are things you can do to reduce that anxiety and give you more visibility earlier on so that you know exactly, or you have a better idea of what some of those roadblocks are going to be before you go into the engagement. You can plan better and you can make more informed decisions as to, yes, this service provider is going to do a good job for us because we've done our due diligence and we know it's going to be a good fit.
I feel like you're building the foundation of the cure to diversification anxiety therapy. I think is maybe this is the start of that to help those in that position.
I think at XDS we're going to have a little therapy booth, diversification anxiety therapy booth.
A little cone of silence where people can go and be vulnerable and discuss their diversification anxieties. Yes. I love it. So, Carla, what are the top things that you look for in a partner when diversifying? And this might be the Behaviour Interactive perspective. This might be your own personal take. But what are those top 2 or 3 things that you really look for?
Oh, it always, for me, depends on the type of relationship that we're going to be going into. For example, like when it came to in the past, like you have like your outsourcing and maybe gentle co-dev style relationships, and a lot of it is more about like the project due diligence and making sure that they're going to be a good fit in terms of like quality, communication, and then the partner due diligence is obviously super useful for making sure that they're going to be a good culture fit and you're going to be able to communicate well with them. But then something that I've started to notice since I've moved to Behaviour, and we've been focusing a lot on full development and publishing style relationships. And what I found is what becomes more and more important is the stability of the partner itself, because you're relying so heavily on a very large team compared to maybe like a smaller outsource or co-dev engagement. And so the stability, that the company are providing, and the culture that they're building for their team, and the processes they're putting in place to retain these team members that you need, is super important. Because at the end of the day, if you have this big full development project that you want this partner to work on, you're going to have to make sure that they can retain key resources for as long as possible, because you need to retain that quality. So making sure that they can retain their talent, and that they're keeping them engaged, they're keeping them feeling like they have a good sense of belonging, for me is super, super important. So for me, company culture has become more and more important, because for me, that is the cornerstone for ensuring that a company can retain their employees, make them feel included, and make them feel like they really belong there. Because at the end of the day, like, that's the way we're going to get a really good quality product.
And that goes for the external partners company culture. That can apply to our own internal, the importance of our own internal company culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the dependence on that for success of all of our projects, all of our titles.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I've always been very passionate about DE&I, and it's a question that I've always asked when it comes to doing due diligence with partners, because I want to make sure that if we're working with a partner, that they have like a culture that almost aligns with our own, and values that align with our own as a developer, because I want to make sure that we're going to be able to work together well, and we're going to have the same vibe. We're going to have differences, obviously, but I think it helps. And I feel like for full development and publishing engagements, it becomes even more important.
And DE&I is probably a whole other podcast subject that we could get into.
Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
So since you stepped off the stage in delivering this talk up until now, have you heard feedback from others in terms of people, your fans come up to you and said, Carla, this one gem that you shared in the talk really helped to change our strategy or change our business or the way that we think about things? I mean, have you heard any feedback like that?
I had lots of very lovely feedback, like during XDS. Pretty much like when I walked off the stage, people were coming up to me and saying, oh my God, like you made me think about due diligence in a different way. And that's really what I was hoping for. Like, I feel as though due diligence is conducted generally in the games industry as like a very high level thing, like head count, year founded, rates, portfolio. And it's like, it's so much deeper than that. And you can find out so much about how an engagement is gonna look down the line by doing this deeper due diligence at the start. And that's really what I wanted to open up people's eyes to. And I think I managed to do that, which was good, thank goodness, because that was the aim. But yeah, I had loads of really positive comments, which was great. And even like when we were planning for XDS Ignite, we were on a call planning a table topic, and one of the people in that call was like, Carla, I saw your presentation.
Oh,
it was
awesome.
really, really great.
So flattering, right?
So yeah, that was great. That was probably it's probably the one that I've had the most positive response from. And I really hope that people use it as a reference point. Whenever they're doing due diligence, if they go ahead and start creating their own databases based on these questions, and actually finding that it's sparking off questions in their head that they would have never thought of, that's amazing. I really hope that people have got a lot out of it.
Changing lives and changing businesses one presentation at a time, Carla.
So, Chris.
I need to thank you so much for your time today, for coming in, for delivering this talk at XDS, and thanking you on behalf of all those that were, impacted by that in the community. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Without further ado, we bring you Carla Rylance's talk on external development essentials, diversifying with confidence.
Enjoy.
Hi everyone, how's it going? Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to External Development Essentials, Diversifying with Confidence. My name is Carla Rylance. I'm the head of external production at Behaviour Interactive. I'm also a member of the XDS Advisory Committee. I've been in games since 2005. I'm an external development specialist with AAA studios in the past, such as the Coalition, Electronic Arts, and Lionhead Studios. And I'm a collaborator in outsourcing, co-development, and full development engagements with worldwide external partners. So some of the main takeaways I hope that you'll get from this presentation include, if you're a developer or a publisher, the positive impact of robust due diligence in partner diversification, how to reduce risk when diversifying, and actions you can take to diversify with confidence, to include things like reducing some of the surprises that come along with it, and how to be prepared. If you're a service provider, what I hope you'll get out of this is an insight into the level of due diligence required for long-term partnerships, the due diligence questions that you should prepare for, and to create understanding into the necessity for thorough due diligence prior to engaging in some of these long-term partnerships. So quick agenda, we'll go through an introduction to start with, then our big deep dive is the importance of due diligence. We'll follow that with some stability in onboarding, and finally, we can diversify with confidence. So, quick intro. For those of you who may not be entirely certain what I mean by diversification, here's a quick example. So you have a video game developer, and their executive team want to increase the amount of external development done over the next year by 50%. So the developer go to their active partners who have really strong capabilities, they can totally do the job, but we don't have the capacity available. So the developer then need to diversify the partners that they're working with. They need to find new partners. So they approach an established service provider, maybe like a medium-sized company. They have the capacity available, but the developer are uncertain about whether their capabilities hit exactly what they need. So this produces diversification anxiety. Another example would be the developer could go to a newly established service provider who have amazing capabilities, they have capacity available, but because they are a newly established service provider, once again, this causes diversification anxiety. One of the aims for this session is to reduce diversification anxiety and to increase diversification success. So I'm just going to set the stage with some data from the XDS Insights report from 2022. If you haven't read it, it's fantastic. Great job, Ryan Faraji, if you're in this room, and Chris Wren, of course. There was some data in there regarding diversification specifically. A question was asked to developers and publishers, what is the frequency of you changing your partners year over year? 61% of respondents said that 75% remains the same year over year. And some of the most popular reasons for changing partners include to diversify work with other partners, to increase capacity, because partners get acquired, and that's it. So diversification is on the mind of developers. If we go back to the Insights report from 2022, some of the biggest concerns with external development reported by developers and publishers include market consolidations or loss of partner options. So if a competitor is acquired by, or if a partner is acquired by a competitor, for example, the scarcity of talent. And if we skip to the fifth item that came up, it's small vendors with no track record. So if we take a look at the first two items on this list, they're both tipping points for diversification. So an event that happens that makes a developer need to diversify their portfolio. And the third point here is actually hesitation regarding diversification. So another one of the aims for this session is to reduce diversification hesitation and to increase diversification success. What also came out of the XDS Insights report is the need to diversify to increase capacity is pretty common among developers. If we look at some of the top issues reported by developers and publishers, one of the top issue was partners lack capacity, followed by communication challenges, followed by a loss of talent, iteration issues, and poor quality deliverables. Point 1 and point 3, again, both tipping points for diversification. And the other 3 points are some of the anxieties that come along with diversifying your portfolio. Another aim for this session, to decrease diversification uncertainty and to increase diversification success. Summing up some of the key points here. 1, diversification is on the mind of developers. 2, there is a thirst for capacity and a competition for talent. And there are anxieties regarding diversification. So now we'll move on to, I'm going to call the meat of this presentation, the importance of due diligence. So for those of you who might not be certain exactly what due diligence is, a dictionary definition is a comprehensive appraisal of a business undertaken by a prospective buyer, especially to establish its assets and liabilities and evaluate its commercial potential. For me, due diligence is the cornerstone for diversification success. So I want to give you a quick insight into the importance of due diligence by showing you a very fancy diversification timeline. Due diligence is right at the start of diversifying to a new partner, the very first step in going into production. So for me, due diligence is all about finding the gaps with a partner, finding those places where those diversification anxieties can come up. It's basically a high-level overview of opportunity and risk and should require very little overhead. Once you've done your due diligence with a partner and you've gone, yep, there are some gaps, but they have amazing potential, I would then move on to a second round of due diligence, which I would call more of a deep dive. This is where I would verify that those gaps that I've spotted during the first round of due diligence actually exist. And this is where a level of investment comes in with the partner, additional overhead. It's an investment in a deeper due diligence process. Once you've done that deep dive, you're like, yeah, I've verified that those gaps actually exist, but I'm still thinking that the partner has amazing potential. Fantastic. We can then go in and start an engagement with the partner, move on to onboarding them. And this is the part that I call filling the gaps. So you found the gaps with due diligence, you verified that the gaps are there with a deep dive, and now you can go on filling the gaps during onboarding by welcoming the partner and introducing expectations and processes. This requires additional investment and additional overhead. Once you've onboarded and you're like, yes, we filled all those gaps, we think, fantastic. Let's continue working with this partner, then move on to a pilot period, which I would class as monitoring those gaps, making sure that you have filled all of those gaps correctly. It's basically casual production to ensure that onboarding was successful. And then once you've done that, you've monitored the gaps, you're pretty happy, fantastic. Move into maintenance, full production, and engage with confidence. I hope that you can see by this diversification timeline that this very, very first part of due diligence is absolutely integral. Without doing this first round of due diligence, you're pretty much going into maintenance and full production completely blindfolded. So, let's break down my due diligence process. I tend to break down the questions that I ask during due diligence to help find those gaps into 3 different pillars. For me, these are the most important items to focus on during due diligence. 1 is the partner's security. 1 is the partner's quality. And 3rd is the partner's retention. Now, when I tend to ask questions that are kind of related to security, I find that they're related to the history of the studio and the studio itself. My questions regarding quality are generally focused on the present and the people at the studio. And my retention-based questions are generally regarding the future and the leadership of the external partner. So, to diversify with confidence, I use these 3 pillars to steer my due diligence questions, which elevate opportunities and mitigate risk by finding the gaps. Now, you will see this icon throughout the next few slides where I will do a little bit of a deep dive in some of the questions that I tend to ask during due diligence to help you find where those gaps are. And hopefully that will help you to get a really good image of how you can start to fill those gaps. So, when it comes to security-based questions, if I'm doing a short-term engagement, I can tend to keep things pretty high level. Start asking about past projects, past clients. I basically want to figure out, do they have a track record for shipping great games? So we can keep it pretty high level, past projects, past clients, portfolios, CVs. Basically, I'm trying to figure out here, what are the project and pipeline similarities that I have with this studio? But then when we go into long-term engagements, this is where I start to go a little bit deeper with some of the questions I tend to ask. I ask questions about their locations. One of the things I want to find out is, are their locations safe and secure? Where are your offices located? Where is your office located is obviously one of the obvious questions you can ask here. One of the reasons I ask this question is to figure out about region stability. If the partner does have a studio in a region that is unstable, you can start to ask questions to that partner about how do you create more stability in that region where your studio is? What processes do you have in place here to create that stability? It could be that there's opportunities for subcontracting or relocation for resources that may be affected with areas of instability. Another reason I ask this is to do with region attractiveness. And basically, I want to know that the region that they're in is a good location for attracting and retaining senior talent. Because if not, could you be at risk for communication challenges, iteration issues, poor quality deliverables? It's possible. So you can then start to deep dive that a little bit and start asking questions specifically to that, such as, how do you attract senior talent and what benefits do you have to help retain these resources? By asking these questions, it can really help you to fill some of those gaps and diversify with confidence. Another question I have regarding locations is, what's your office setup like? Are you open plan? Do you have security on the door? Do you have cameras? Things like that. And one of the reasons that I'm asking this is because I want to know that they can keep our data and our IP safe. There's lots of past talks from XDS about the importance of network and infrastructure security. That's your homework if you're interested in this a little bit more. So another long-term question I'm going to ask is regarding the year they were founded. And what I want to know really here has the studio maintained stability throughout its lifetime? I want to know if there was any growth or change. What has prompted this growth or change? It really helps me to paint a good picture of stability and also the management style of the studio as well. I want to know if there's been any growth. Is it related? Is it departmental growth? Have they expanded their skill sets and their capabilities? And if so, one of the thoughts that comes in my head about this is, does this align with their leadership's passions and their skill sets? Because if not, could this potentially lead to poor quality deliverables? So one of the questions that I would tend to ask following this is like, what training do you have in place to ensure that your specialist resources remain relevant and engaged? And generally, the answer to this will help me to build a picture that, yes, we can diversify with confidence here. Another reason I'm going to ask about what has prompted growth or change, I'm going to know a little bit about whether headcount has fluctuated over the time with the studio. Because this could go back to quality, you know. Could this also mean a lack of capacity for us in the future? Could it mean a loss of talent? So one of the questions that I can ask if there has been past headcount fluctuation to help me diversify with confidence are, what are your future plans to navigate aggressive ramp-ups or ramp-downs? And even things like, can we add key resources to our contracts? This really, really helps me to build a picture of whether I can diversify with confidence with that partner. So by asking security-based questions, we can gain valuable insights into whether the studio has a good track record with shipping great games, whether the locations are safe and secure, and whether the studio has maintained stability throughout its lifetime. Really helping to paint a picture of diversity confidence with project match expertise, evolving skill sets, and successful talent retention, and helping to gain insights into some of the gaps that could come up, such as a loss of talent, difficulty attracting talent, and unproportionate growth. When it comes to quality-based questions, for short-term engagements, again, we can keep it kind of high level and start to ask about the partner's services. Does the studio offer good quality in the services required? What services do you offer? And basically, I want to know that the skills that they can provide match the project that I'm trying to find a partner for. But when it comes to long-term engagements, I'm going to start asking more in-depth questions. One of them is regarding attrition. And basically, what I'm trying to figure out here is, can the studio maintain quality with the attrition rates that they have? So I'm going to ask a question. What is your attrition rate at your studio? Which is, for those maybe not aware, it's like the rate at which people leave the studio. It's a pretty simple piece of math, and it'll give you a percentage. So if a percentage comes back low, you have like a pretty amazing opportunity there for high quality with that partner. Just so you know, like the average rate in the UK for tech staff in 2019 was about 18.3%. I imagine that's probably gone up since COVID hit and everything. It's a good number to kind of work from. If the percentage comes back high, could this be a gap? Could this be a gap that needs to be filled? Because if so, it could lead to a lack of capacity at the partner. It could lead to communication challenges, loss of talent, iteration issues, poor quality deliverables, all things you need to pay super close attention to. So if you do see this gap start to come up, you can counter it with some questions. What are the contributing factors to your attrition rate? There's probably a very valid reason. And what are your plans for improving attrition, as well as, again, are you willing to add your key personnel to contracts? All of these questions will help to paint a picture of whether you can diversify with confidence with this partner. Another long-term question on the quality side for me, I tend to deep dive a little bit on employees. Basically, I want to know, how does the studio provide good quality staff stability? I'm going to ask, first of all, about the number of employees that they have. Basically, I want to know that the studio has the size for us to grow our project in the long term with that partner, and we're not going to get stuck and struggle for capacity in the future. I'm also going to ask the question about, do you have full-time contract resources? Basically, I want to know that some of the key personnel that we have coming onto our project, that we can retain them if they are contractors, because this could be a gap. We could end up losing valuable talent if there are any gaps here. So some of the questions I can ask here to help gain diversity confidence include, is it possible, again, to add key personnel to contracts, as well as, do you plan on adding any full-time headcount in the disciplines that we require? Another point here, which kind of relates to the security side, regarding contractor regions. If your contractor is in a region that could be have regional employment laws, it's best to just check with your legal team just to make sure that there's no red tape or anything that you're missing on the legal side. Either way, full-time or contract employees, you have an amazing opportunity for high quality. Another question that I like to ask is, what benefits do you offer your employees? And one of the reasons for this is regarding retention. I want to know that the people they're employing have a great sense of belonging and inclusivity. Because without that, could you be at risk of having a gap with a loss of talent or even poor quality deliverables? The partner can come back with some amazing answers regarding, oh yeah, we have these fabulous well-being initiatives and we have great healthcare. Fantastic. These kind of answers will really, really help you to diversify with confidence. Another question I'm going to ask regarding employees is, what training do you offer your employees? Basically, this can relate to specialism training, making sure that the employees remain engaged and relevant. But there's also things like workplace training, which I find super important too. Things like office etiquette. Again, this relates back to retention and a feeling of belonging and well-being, but also regarding security. I want to know that the people that they have on their team know how to keep our IP and our data safe. All of the answers here can help me to know that I can diversify with confidence with that partner. So by asking quality-based questions, we can gain really valuable insights into whether the studio offers good quality in the services required, whether the studio can maintain quality with retention, and if their studio invests in growing their employees' skill sets and quality bar. Helping to give you diversity confidence, knowing that they have a good skill set match, good retention, and that their specialists are going to remain engaged with you. And helps you to spot some of the gaps that might come up regarding poor retention, key personnel risks, or even unworkable contractor regions. And finally, I'm going to ask questions regarding retention. For short term, I tend to ask questions regarding rates. I want to know, are the rates that their leadership are offering for this partnership, are they fair? There's lots of different rates that you can delve into depending on the partner and their services. Basically, what I'm trying to figure out here is whether the budget is aligned with what we need and whether the rates that they want to provide for this project are fair for that region that they're in. When it comes to long-term engagements, I'm going to start asking questions about leadership specifically. I want to know, how does their leadership continue to empower and drive their team? I want to know a little bit about what their leadership's passions and their values are. One of the reasons for this, I want to know what their dedication is to retaining their team and keeping them happy and engaged. One of the questions that tends to come out of this, which I find super important, is regarding DE&I, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. For me, I think that there could be a gap there if there are not DE&I initiatives in place, because it can affect things like varying perspectives, employee engagement, company reputation. It can definitely help to improve hiring. So this, for me, is a really important question to ask. I'm also really, really interested to hear about what are some of the causes that leadership are really invested in and really passionate about, because this really, really helps to paint a great picture of where they see their company evolving and what they're putting their efforts into. And another question I'm going to ask is about evolution. Where do you see your company going in 1, 3, 5 years' time? What are they doing to evolve the skill sets and the capabilities of their team? All of these questions will help to paint a picture for me on whether I can diversify with confidence with that partner. I'm also going to ask about the leadership's specific experience. I want to know that they have expertise in the skill sets and in the skill sets that we need for this project. Because if not, if they don't have the passion and the experience to drive the exact things you're after, could it affect poor quality? Could it give you poor quality deliverables in the long run? It's a good question, and one of the things you can counter with that to help you diversify with confidence is, what training do you offer to ensure your specialists remain engaged and relevant? I'm also going to ask a question regarding whether the leadership has stakes in any other companies. And this is purely from like a security perspective. I just want to know that there's no conflict of interest there. It's best to just ask it to make sure. So you can, if you do see a gap here, you can ask a really simple question to help diversify with confidence and clear that gap. Is project or company information shared between the companies that you have stakes in? And the final question I'm going to ask is regarding growth. I want to know whether this studio will still be a good fit for us in 5 years' time. I'm going to ask about the company's strategy. I want to know that they're going to be a good future fit for us. And are they evolving in a direction that fits our project specifically? Without this, could you run into issues such as, is the partner going to lack capacity down the line to give you what you need? Or are you going to end up with some poor quality deliverables if you don't have a clearer view into the direction they're thinking of going in the future? If you can deep dive this a little bit, it will really help to increase your diversity confidence with the partner. I'm also going to ask a question regarding recruitment. I want to know about local talent pools and how they have access to regional talent. I'm going to ask about some of the local schools that they have nearby that they recruit from. Who are their local competition? And what I really want to know here is whether there is a balanced amount of seniors at their company. Because without that, could you come into communication challenges, iteration issues, poor quality deliverables? I'm basically going to start asking questions if I see a gap here about what's the ratio of senior to junior staff. This will really help me to paint a picture of whether I can diversify with confidence here. So by asking retention-based questions, we can gain valuable insights into whether the rates being offered by their leadership for this partnership are fair, how their studio leadership drive and empower their team, and whether the studio will still be a good fit in 5 years' time, helping to paint a picture of diversity confidence with their passionate leadership, their DE&I commitments and initiatives, and even their good local talent pools, as well as helping us to find out where those gaps could be regarding future partnership misalignment or difficulty attracting senior talent, or even conflicts of interest. So some of the key points from this section include, if you're a developer or publisher, you can use due diligence as your first line of defense to help you diversify with confidence. Focus on the key performance pillars to steer your due diligence questions, and use due diligence to find the gaps as well as elevate opportunities with the potential partner. If you're a service provider, I hope this gives you insight into the due diligence questions asked for long-term relationships, as well as all due diligence questions are useful and are all relevant. So now we have done our due diligence, we can start moving on to onboarding with the partner. So the due diligence is looking good. We've found some gaps. There is amazing potential. What's next? We now move on to our deep dive to help verify some of those gaps that we found. But how do I verify that those gaps are really gaps? There are some processes that we can put in place. You have some options. If you notice some gaps with quality, some of the things that you can do here include a skill set test, for example, where this does require investment with the partner ahead of time. You can even do things like a team structure overview to make sure that the ratio of juniors, mid-level, seniors that are on the team are going to be good for making sure that you can get good quality. If there were some gaps with retention, this is where you can start to invest in an on-site visit with the partner. So you can start to validate company culture. You can also start to request policy documentation to make sure that everything is in line. And if you did notice any gaps with security, you can start to conduct some cross-functional due diligence, so maybe some tech due diligence, maybe some IT due diligence, as well as even like pipeline and infrastructure tests. Again, this is where a layer of investment can come in with the partner. So now you've done your deep dive, you've verified that some of the gaps are there. They're low-risk gaps, and you're like, yeah, we definitely want to engage here, so what's next? You now go into onboarding and start to fill some of those gaps. What can we do to fill these gaps and mitigate risk with the partner? So if there are still areas where we need to improve quality, you can start doing this by making sure that your document is coherent, clear, and complete. You can conduct some on-site training, but making sure absolutely that you're setting clear expectations with your partner is absolutely integral. If you want to maintain getting visibility on retention, you can start to add this key personnel to contracts, of course, but you can also start to conduct retrospectives at the end of the onboarding stage as well to figure out how are the team feeling? Are they excited about the project? Is there anything missing that they feel from the partner side? And you can continue to help bolster security by establishing escalation criteria, so knowing on the development team when something is a yellow flag or a red flag and knowing what to do when this happens, and also making sure that there's exit plans in the contract as well. So now that you've filled the gaps with onboarding, you can move on to a pilot, which is monitoring those gaps that are there. How can we make sure that the gaps that we filled were actually filled successfully is the big question here. So you can continue to monitor quality. One technique is by asking the partner to maintain your documentation for you, your art bibles, your tech documentation. This will help you to get a high-level view of whether the partner is totally understanding where you're coming from. You can continue to monitor retention with anonymous questionnaires with key personnel. You can continue to conduct your retrospectives on a monthly, milestone-ly basis, whatever works for you. You can even start to implement headcount stability key performance indicators at this point to ensure that the ratio of seniority within the team that you're working with remains stable throughout production. You can also use key performance indicators to make sure that tech and IT remain stable, especially with integrated development engagements. These can be kind of integral, making sure that internet bandwidth remains high and that that downloads are happening fast enough. All this kind of thing is super, super important for integrated development. So now that you have done your pilot period, you're happy with the partnership, amazing. What's next? You move on to maintenance, and congratulations, you've diversified with confidence. So now that you've diversified, you've got a new partner, you can continue strong. Hopefully, quality should be up to point at this point in time, so you can continue to monitor retention with the periodic on-sites, questionnaires, retrospectives, headcount stability, key performance indicators. And you can also continue to monitor security with your tech and your IT KPIs. So, some of the key points from stability in onboarding. If you are a developer or publisher, you can continue to build diversity confidence by implementing actions through onboarding, pilots, and maintenance. If you're a service provider, be transparent if there are gaps that need to be filled by the developer for you to do your best work. And then congratulations, again, you have diversified with confidence, hooray. I hope you enjoyed that. Some of the key learnings we can take away from this include due diligence is the cornerstone of diversifying with confidence. Robust due diligence highlights opportunities and helps you to mine the gap. And actions can be implemented in due diligence, onboarding, pilots, and maintenance to help you diversify with confidence. If you are a service provider, I hope that you'll be taking away that in-depth due diligence is necessary for long-term partnerships. Be prepared for the questions presented during due diligence, and if there are gaps, be transparent and help developers to fill them. Thank you very much.